in some kind of easy seat. And how I've been trying to start classes is doing some information gathering, some just noticing sensation and tapping into like where we are before we get moving or before we expect for our bodies to do some like constructive breathing. And so this looks different for everyone, but I'm going to show you my tools that I've been using and offering in class and see how they land for you all this morning. So the first thing will be just to get yourself into an easy seat. And one of the pleasures of practicing at home is that we can touch our faces. So that's where we're going to start with our sensation, is doing some gathering information, some just noticing sensation in our face. So you'll begin by creating some heat between your hands. And then once you feel some warmth building, you'll just place the palms of your hands over your eyes. Just take one more breath cycle here. And then placing your thumb somewhere along almost like underneath your eye socket, you'll create some circles with your pointer finger around your eyes. If you have glasses, you may take them off or skip this one if you're not feeling it. Just a few circles around the eye socket. And then you'll take your pointer and your middle fingers and rub along the bridge of the nose. You're sort of in charge of how much pressure you create for yourself this morning, how slow or fast the movement is. And then you'll come to the earlobes and you'll pull gently down and out. As you pull down and out, you might create some circles. Maybe even exploring those like outside crevices of the earlobe. And then you'll take your pointer finger and your middle finger and almost like a V along the jawline here. And then taking that pointer finger, you're going to run it down the length of the jawline until your fingers find one another towards the center of your chin. You could use your thumb too. Just doing this a few times. This is where our eustachian tubes live. Oftentimes we can sort of massage any kind of stuffiness out. And then placing your thumbs underneath your ears, you'll use your pointer fingers and kind of crisscross along the space above and below your lips. This one feels a little funky. Kind of go with the weirdness of it for a second, just gathering information, creating opportunity for sensation. And then last will just be using your fingertips to tap on the scalp. As you wrap up the final couple seconds of this, you'll come to find a standing position. And we'll finish up the rest of our sort of sensation, our gathering of information. So you'll begin by, the practitioner that I learned this from calls this, what does she call it? A slap massage. So the first thing you'll do is kind of check in with your wrists, make sure your wrists are nice and loose. And then I'm gonna eventually mute myself so you all don't have to listen to me slapping, but you'll start with your left leg, you'll move to your right leg, then your left arm and your right arm. And it's a very simple up and down. Again, you get to be the keeper of how much pressure you create, what this massage feels like. Just waking up each of our limbs. I'm going to mute ourselves. Take your time here. Sometimes as we gather information, we can take note like, oh, this is a little too hard, or I need a little bit more contact with myself, or I'm not into this at all. And any of the answers that you find as you gather this information are the right answers for you this morning. Once you move on from your limbs, just do a little bit of tapping on your belly if you're comfortable, maybe on the sides of your hips. Then moving to your chest. And then maybe for just a couple breaths, we keep our hands placed along the front of our body. Maybe one's on our belly, one's on our heart. Our feet can be about hip distance apart, maybe a bit wider. Just kind of allow the sensations to integrate, to be part of you now. It's always weird when your head's cut off. Just another breath here, in through your nose if you can, exhale out of your mouth or your nose. And then we'll get into some half sun salutations. Although there is no sun to praise this morning, we'll pretend it's nice and bright up there. So you'll raise your hands up towards the sky, hands together. And then exhale, you'll fold forward. Stay for a few breaths. Your first forward fold this morning might have a really big bend in your knees, so much so that maybe the chest comes to find the top of the thighs or comes real near it. You can have a real wide stance, like be graceful with yourself for these first few movements that we offer. You can check in with gravity, making sure gravity is supporting you, shaking your head no. And then on an inhale, you're gonna halfway lift. And as you halfway lift, your hands will grace the fronts of your legs. And then an exhale, your hands will grace the back of your legs, forward fold. Just a few of these in your own time, in your own space. Inhale, halfway lift, hands grace the front of the legs. Exhale, forward fold, legs grace, hands grace the back of the legs. We'll all meet in a forward fold. And with a slight bend of the knees, begin to articulate your rising, starting at the tailbone and the sacrum, and imagine each vertebrae slowly, slowly, slowly stacks on top of one another until you've come all the way to a standing position, taking all of the time that you need to get there. Hands will come up overhead once you land. Exhale to heart center. Inhale, rise. Exhale, forward fold. We'll flow here for just another few rounds. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, that really gentle articulation, taking all of the time you need. Rising, rising, rising. Hands overhead. Exhale, hands to heart center. One more round. Inhale, rising. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, halfway lift when you're ready. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, articulating those vertebrae, rising slowly. Hands to heart center. Lift those hands up to the sky once more. The right hand reaches for the left wrist, keeping both of your hip pointers facing the front of the room. Bring both arms towards the right, finding that side body stretch along the length of that open arm, through the armpit, maybe even through the hip and the toes and the legs. Keeping those hip pointers facing forward. A breath here. And then inhale to center. Exhale, switch sides. Wrap up wherever you are in your breath cycle, and then an inhale to rise, center. Exhale, hands to your heart. We're going to do a shoulder series while we're standing. So it'll begin by rolling each shoulder individual of itself. A few more rounds on each side. And then almost like a bear hug, your arms will come out to the sides, and then your fingertips will find one another. Hands come back out to the side, and as you open up, you should feel your scapula, your shoulder blades come towards one another. This is a retracting and protracting of the shoulder blades. This series is an opportunity for our shoulder blades to move in each direction. A couple more times here. And then elbows come to the side, and your hands will land on your belly and then flap open. Those elbows kind of stay put next to the sides, closing and opening. Doing this in your own time, in your own space. Breathing in through your nose if you can, and exhaling out of your nose or your mouth. Do this a few more times. I'm just going to say one thing. I talk a lot about breath through the nose, and this is the only cue I'm going to offer for breath. We have about 20,000 breaths in a day, and as many of them that we can get through our nostrils supports our whole being. One of the things that we could think about is that our nostrils are our first line of defense. So if our breath's coming through our mouth, we don't have those filters, those hairs, those opportunities for catching stuff. So as many breaths through our nose as we can during this practice. Okay, your arms are going to go out to a goal post, and you'll twist your ribs to the right. Feet stay planted. Twist your ribs to the left. A few more times. Back to center, arms up overhead, and then isolate the movement of your shoulder blades, bringing them up and down the back. lifting the shoulder blades up and then lifting them down. Arms down to the sides and then pulling the shoulder blades together and releasing, pulling them together once more and releasing again. Do that one more time. And release. We'll kind of shake it out here. Okay, and from here we're going to do one more standing kind of non-yoga pose, and then we'll get into some more flow on the ground. So if you all have access to a wall or the back of a door, I'm going to show you what the movement looks like, and then you all can go and spend a couple of minutes doing that. So this is something that I learned in training that I took called Movement for Trauma. And the goal of this, this is a strength training tool. It feels like it should be subtle, but it's pretty activating. Giving that notice, you can come out of this at any point. But the goal is to access some dignity in our body. Like, what does it feel like to stand in dignity in our own body? And from a somatic, from like a body standpoint, dignity is very much tied into our posture. And so this strength training pose is an opportunity for us to access some dignity muscles, some postural muscles. So it's called Wall Angel. I might have even done this before with a few of you in class. So you'll find the wall, and your feet will come about a foot off of the wall, maybe about hip distance apart or a little bit less or more, depending on where you are this morning. And it's really simple. Again, it's quite activating, so stay in it for as long as it feels right. Your bottom comes to the wall, and then your back comes to the wall. Your shoulder blades come to the wall, and then the outsides of your arms come to the wall. The backs of your hands come to the wall. Maybe the back of your head comes to the wall. One of the things that you can adjust depending on how you feel is how far your feet come off of the wall. Maybe they need to come closer this morning. Also, how far out your hands travel from your body. The further out, the more activating. The closer in, the less activating. So if you haven't already, move in the direction of an empty wall space or the back of a door, and then I'll cue us in about 2 minutes. Again, you have full agency over staying in this as long as feels right, but I'll let us know about 2 minutes has passed. About 1 more minute. Let your breath support you with staying here, breathing in through your nose, exhaling out of your mouth or your nose. If there's any kind of shaking or jittering in your limbs, if you're comfortable, kind of allow it to happen, allow it to be part of the practice. All right, slowly make your way off the wall and shake it out. Okay, we'll all meet in a downward dog. Hope that was okay for all of you. So once you land in the downward dog, doing all of those kind of like micro movements that make this space your own. Maybe it's pedaling out your feet and your legs. Maybe it's opening up a hip to one side and looking through. Just however you sort of arrive or integrate yourself into downward dog, do those things. We're gonna hold the downward dog for about 90 seconds or so once we've gotten all of those micro movements out. Finding stillness. Noticing if there's room for your breath to expand, for your inhales to be a bit bigger, your exhales to be a bit bigger, and no judgment if they cannot be. From here, holding our downward dog, we're going to imagine that there's a ball on the front of our pelvis, and that ball is going to roll up to the front body all the way to the tip of the head, landing us in a plank. So imagine that ball rolling from your hip, from your pelvis region, down, up your belly, up your chest, up your face, until it lands at the crown of your head, coming to a plank pose. You might very quickly drop your knees to hold the plank, or staying in the full expression of a plank with your knees lifted. And then imagine that ball floating again down to your pelvic region, finding you in a downward dog. We're gonna do that one more time with a little bit more fluidity this time. That ball floats from the pelvic region, up the belly, up the chest, to the crown of the head, landing us in your version of a plank. And then the ball rolls back. In this downward dog now, we'll begin crisscrossing our feet towards our hands. So right over left until we come all the way to a forward fold. Widen your stance here, and then fold over. Let's practice a few halfway lift. On an inhale, exhale, fold forward. 2 more of these on your own, lifting up halfway in the wide-legged forward fold, and then folding forward. Walk your hands towards the right leg. You might even bend that right knee a bit. Might bend it a lot. And then take yourself back to center, walking those hands towards the left foot now. You can create a big bend in that left knee, or maybe a small one. Back to center, begin walking your feet towards one another. So if everybody has blocks or books close by, you can use these, but they're not necessary. If you do, you can bring them to the front of your mat. The movement's gonna look something like this. It will be a forward fold, and then a squat with our knees together. And then a forward fold, and a squat with our knees together. See if you can allow an inhale to take you through one portion and an exhale to take you through the other, which also might mean that you need to pause in between the movements, but see if you can link up your movement with your breath. Couple more rounds. Once you're in your squat, just slowly and gently, artfully make your way to all fours. Once you land in all fours, you might put a blanket underneath your knees for some extra support this morning. Imagine that your hands are just below your shoulders, your knees are just below your hips, and then think about your head and neck. Think about the crown of your head reaching towards the front of the room and checking in that maybe there's a gentle tuck to your chin so that you are not dumping into your head and neck here. And then before we bring any movement into this, just noticing the foundation of this pose is everything touching the ground, right? So let's see if we can evenly disperse the weight of ourselves among the foundation of the pose, starting with the palms of our hands, all 10 of our fingers spread wide, the tops of our knees, the shins, maybe the tops of our feet, or if our toes are tucked, it would be the bottoms of our toes. Just a few breaths for that foundation. And then the first opportunity that we'll create for ourselves here is a bit of a wrist stretch. So the fingertips might come to the sides of the mats, or you might turn your hands all the way so that the fingers are facing towards your knees. Wherever you land this morning is the right place to be. And then holding space for just a bit of discomfort, but never for pain. And then fingertips come back towards the front of the mat. And then we'll imagine drawing circles, really small circles to start with our tailbone. Might feel kind of awkward. Your circles might be kind of oddly shaped, and all of that is totally okay. Now let's give our brain a bit of an opportunity to feel confused and come back to serve us by changing directions of the circle. Small circles with the tailbone now moving in the other direction. And then we're going to take this circle concept in a much bigger way and imagine our whole core being the front, side, and back body, and creating big circles, almost like our core is a jump rope. This probably requires us to have a big bend in our elbows, bringing our faces closer to the mat, big circles with the core. And then change directions. And then slowing the movement down. Just a few cat-cows on your own. Your wrists are probably getting tired if they aren't already. Make your way to a child's pose. To recreate that side body stretch while we're here, walking both of our hands towards the right side of our mat. It might come off of the mat even. When you feel ready, walking yourself to the other side of the mat. Back to center. From here, we're going to create, we're going to move into rabbit pose, which is a gentle inversion. We'll get upside down for just a sec. So imagine your elbows as 2 points of the triangle and your hands clasped together as the third point of the triangle. You'll open your hands up and the back of your head will come to land in that opening of your hands. Sure you all can see me okay. Crown of the head's planted on the ground, knees are apart, gaze is in between the knees. And then again, checking in with the foundation that we're not dumping into one piece part of us, but we're allowing the whole foundation to hold us up here. The elbows, the outsides of the arms, the head, the tops of the feet, the shins, the knees. You might notice some tension in your jaw here. You might notice other spaces that you hold tension. Maybe your breath can offer you some spaciousness, or maybe it's just the observation will be enough today. Making your way back to a child's pose for just an interim, just a place to transfer. And then sliding your heart along the front of the mat until your whole front body has landed. Once you're here, your elbows will come towards your chest, towards the side of the body, palms down flat on the ground. You're just going to rise and fall, coming into this sort of baby back bend, this cobra. An inhale might take you up, and then an exhale, forehead to the ground. Might be opposite, inhale to the ground and exhale up, either way. One more round wherever you are. And then from here, we're gonna move into a yin pose called half frog. So it looks something like this. You're gonna start with your left foot, your left leg, and it's gonna come out to the side. You'll create kind of like a 90-degree angle with the inside of your knee. You might place a blanket underneath the inside of that knee for some extra support along the ground. And then thinking about how far you'd like your foot to travel out from your body. It can extend really far out. It can come in if you'd like. The full front body lands on the ground here. Stay here for about a minute and a half. Putting some trust into the ground, knowing the ground is holding all of the pieces, parts of you. Slowly begin extending that leg back. So the toes are reaching for the back of the mat and then finding that on the other side now. Again, you can place a blanket underneath that knee for some extra cushion and support. And then thinking about that 90-degree angle on the inside of your knee. And then also, depending on where you're at this morning, maybe you extend that foot kind of far away from the body, or it might come kind of close to the body. Be here for about 2 minutes. Extending that leg back slowly. We're going to move into one last pose before finding our final resting position, which is a good transition. It's called starfish. So you can stay on your belly. All limbs would come out like you take the shape of a starfish. You can also take this on your back if that feels more generative or more supportive for you. So taking up lots of space on the ground here, whether you're on your back or your belly, all of the limbs extending out. See if I can find, probably read this so many dozens of times. Let's see if I can sneak it in once more. One of my favorite poems. It's called Starfish by Mary Oliver, one of my favorite poets from born and raised here in Cleveland. She writes, "In the sea rocks, in the stone pockets, under the tide's lip, in water dense as blindness, they slid like sponges, like too many thumbs. I knew this, and what I wanted was to draw my hands back from the water. What I wanted was to be willing to be afraid. But I stayed there. I crouched on the stone wall while the sea poured its harsh song through the sluices, while I waited for the gritty lightning of their touch, while I stared down through the tides leaving, where sometimes I could see them, their stubborn flash, lounging on my knuckles. What good does it do to lie all day in the sun, loving what is easy? It never grew easy, but at last I grew peaceful. All summer, my fear diminished as they bloomed through the water like flowers, like flecks of an uncertain dream, while I lay on the rocks, reaching into the darkness, learning little by little to love our only world." So taking your time to come to find whatever final resting pose serves you with the props that you have and how you're feeling in your body this morning. And if there's anything in between that you would like to offer yourself, you should create space to do that. Otherwise, we're going to have a nice long, like 10-minute final resting pose. This can look like Shavasana on your back. This can look like staying where you are. It can look like legs up a wall. If you need any other kind of like verbal guidance or suggestions, just speak up or throw some words in the chat. I'm here. Yeah, as you begin to settle into wherever you'll land for the last 10 minutes or so, think about that information gathering at the beginning, that sort of that sensation exploration, and take maybe some of that information that you learned to serve you in this final space. It might just be like words of affirmation towards body parts that were feeling stiff this morning, or it might be like moving yourself into a space that provides some kind of support for where you might be feeling tight, or take that information gathering time and see if you can support yourself here with that information the last 10 minutes or so. Your eyes might be closed or a soft gaze. At the very least, see if you can soften your eyelids. Noticing the sounds that are coming furthest from you. Maybe outside of your house even. As you bring your awareness to those sounds, see if you can name them and take a breath. And then let's see if we can shift our awareness to our own homes or wherever we're practicing this morning. Noticing the sounds around us, naming them and taking breaths. Heaters humming, people living life, TVs talking, whatever they may be. Name them and breathe. And then what if we bring our awareness to the space of our mats and the sounds of our own body? Our clothes shifting against the mat. Breath coming in through our nostrils and exhaling out wherever it may be exhaling out. Naming them and continuing to breathe.
Taking a breath in through your nose. And letting it go. Maybe you offer your body a couple of gentle gestures to bring it back into this space. Wiggling your fingers or your toes. Maybe even moving the tongue from the top of your mouth to the bottom or vice versa. Opening your eyelids and closing them again. And if you found some kind of lying position, however, you can ease yourself into an easy seat. There might be something in between, like a fetal position. And let's wrap up our practice the same way that we started. So we'll just create some heat again between the palms of our hands. And we'll place them over our eyelids for just a moment, just a couple seconds actually. And then maybe your hands come to prayer or to come to the front of your body. And if a bow is something that feels right for you this morning, you can take a bow. Just honoring the practice, the space you've created for yourselves and each other. I'm always so grateful to be together in these spaces with you all. Thanks so much. Happy Sunday.